it's not an opt-out, right? Learning and development, being competent in a technical role, it's not an option, it's a necessity.
I am here with Wouter Jan, who is the Global Head of Learning at Fugro. Fugro is a Dutch headquartered company that do a lot of work around geo-surveying, data, operations, and I think more recently moving into sea robotics. There's been some exciting developments there. Wouter Jan has been with us for a few years, has joined iVentiv in Paris, will be joining us again later this year in Amsterdam. And we're really excited to have this chance to just to learn a little bit more about the work that he's doing at Fugro in the learning space and how that's really driving the business transformation. So welcome, Wouter Jan. Thank you for your time and really
thank you, Hannah.
The chance to speak.
Yeah, thank you.
Perhaps you can just start from the top with sharing a little bit about the transformation journey that's happening at Fugro and the role of L&D within that.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so Fugro, indeed, like you said, it's a geo-data engineering company and quite exciting company from an L&D perspective, because as any engineering company, expertise is the heart of the company now. It's very close to our business strategy and the objectives. If you look at kind of one of the key strategic pillars, as many companies for Fugro as well, is to grow and transform the current business. And of course, L&D plays a big role in realizing that, right? There's a big ask for L&D to be able to cope with so many new hires coming in a company and to ensure that they get competent in either their technical role or their business role in a company. And of course, learning helps there to, one, ensure we retain the critical talent that we have, but also to ensure that the new talent gets in their role as quickly as possible. On the transformation side, and you touched on it with the introduction, for Fugro, there's a transformation going to what the future workforce is like. We do a lot of offshore work, but with new technology, we are going into a phase where we will have more uncrewed vessels, and we've got much more remote operations instead of our field staff being offshore. And that asks for a different skill set, right? Working in an office environment versus being on a vessel offshore, being able to run multiple projects at the same time, but still being able to engage with something like weather or conditions from an office environment, from something that is happening, at sea. And there, of course, there's a big ask from L&D to ensure that we can reskill our current workforce in the future workforce, but also attracting some of the capabilities in the technology and the digitalization side that we need to be able to transform the company as such.
I mean, it's a really exciting space, and there's so much innovation happening there. But I can imagine that, as with everything, there's a lot of responsibility there. It is a high risk environment as well. Is there work around simulations for that? Is L&D kind of playing in that space?
Absolutely. Yeah, so for a lot of the work, indeed, simulation is a big part of our L&D strategy. If we are looking at remote operations, if we're looking at uncrewed vessels on the RFV side, but even on drilling, we use a lot of simulators actually to train our staff, like you would normally see with aircraft pilots as well, right? If you're, controlling a vessel from onshore, you do want to ensure that you do come in situations that are not expected, but also to train that in a safe environment. So simulation is definitely a part of it. But also we've got a physical training center in Plymouth, in the south of UK, where we actually bring our technical staff to really go into the 4 weeks boot camps. Because if you talk about equipment and technical roles, you need to touch, feel, smell the equipment before getting competent, right? So there's a good mixture of simulations and with that getting the right skills, but also with practical on-the-job experiences.
And you mentioned there the expertise as well. I think with with training programs like this and environments like this, a lot of it is about the technology and the apparatus and what's available. But ultimately, in those high pressure situation, it's the expertise of the individual to make decisions in the moment, weigh up the options there. So speaking to the expertise, and you mentioned that the headcount growth as well. What does that look like in terms of onboarding and also retaining? Is there a talent journey there?
Yeah, that's definitely a talent journey, and I think that's also critical for a lot of our L&D work. Like it's not siloed. So I've got a lot of conversation with colleagues within the L&D field, and I think a big step that we need to take as L&D is to ensure that we are very much interlinked within the wider HR. So I'm working closely together with the talent acquisition director in Fugro. She's doing the workforce planning and a strategic workforce planning, because that's the inflow for the demand on L&D, right? Working closely together with the talent and leadership director on engagement. What are the engagement scores? What are reasons for voluntary leave in a company? Is that actually development? Is that learning in the job? Or is that the potential growth towards your aspired role in the future, right? So a lot of linkages between the other HR COEs to ensure that, the impact of L&D, but actually the impact of HR and the HR COEs is as big as possible there. So a lot of cross linkages between the other COEs as well.
One thing we talk about a lot as well is, as you mentioned there, it's L&D kind of moving out of the HR space and really being seen as that business partner, and how critical it can be. Is that something that you've experienced, maybe not just in this role, but in your roles previously as well? L&D moving out of that HR space into a critical L&D, the business partner, and how do you get leaders to engage with that?
Yeah, that's an interesting topic, right? So I think traditionally L&D within HR has been very much focused, or for some companies at least, very much focused on more the leadership side, generic and business skills. With a company as Fugro, where it's very much about the technical expertise, because that's the business critical skills that we have as a company. As an L&D department, you need to focus on that. Because let's be honest, our employees are looking at development holistically. If you are a supervisor, a drilling supervisor in offshore staff, you want to know how to develop yourself as a leader, as for some of your generic skills, as for the technical competence. So my vision on that is that you need to package it as a whole. It's a holistic offering on all areas of development. And within Fugro, it is included within HR. Because actually the business partner for a lot of businesses is actually the HR partner. So for me, it's much more utilizing the HR network that HRBPs can strategically talk on all elements, as well technical as more generic as leadership, and combine that. What of course is critical then is that also your staff and your L&D staff itself is very close to the business. We've got some internal trainers with over 10, 20 years of experience in the field, and that ensures that business proximity. So business proximity is indeed key, and you could debate if you then still want to have technical training within the business or within HR. At the end, it's all about the relationship, being able to put yourself in the shoes of the employees in the business and be close to their current challenges.
We hear that a lot from many of our attendees, many people that come to the events, and perhaps something as well is what it comes down to really is communication, and how are you communicating what it is that is available to employees, how that can impact not just their their day-to-day work, but their future career paths. But maybe as an open question, have you seen kind of how L&D is communicated to the business change in recent years?
Oh, definitely. I think a lot of the communication was more communicating what curriculum is out there, what offerings are there. Communicating in the past, especially when we went to digital learning, was a lot about sharing platforms. And I've always seen it as a kind of spray and pray strategy. You just spray what's out there, and you pray that people find what's relevant for them, right? And I think what the biggest change is that L&D is much more about the marketing. So we need to market what's out there, but we also need to provide the context. Why is this important? Why does this, learning solutions link up to the strategic objectives of the company, the objectives to the team, the personal objective of somebody to grow within their role or in their aspired role? So the marketing is much more about making it relevant for the person and for the business itself, instead than just communicating curricula or offerings. So providing context is critical there. And what we do in Fugro specifically is very much focus on, from a role perspective, from an employee perspective, what is that whole development journey, right? And again, touching here the different elements from what is essential on the safety side and what is essential, to start within Fugro, up to what is the leadership component, the technical component, the generic skills component to that. Because employees want to be guided, right? We are guided in many other forms within our private situation. If it goes to music, if it goes to television, if it goes to videos. So also in the workplace, you want to be guided on what's relevant for you in your location, in your position. So I think that's been a big change in how we communicate and market actually within learning and development.
We've seen that as well. I think it's a really interesting shift that's happening at the moment as well, is that storytelling piece. So it's more about building in the story so people can see what's in it for them as individuals, what's in it for them as their team, but also how that is also going to drive the business, drive the culture forward, and make tangible changes. In the space that Fugro is working in, you can see how it's impacting. I know some key pillars are making it a safe, livable world. So really being able to see how your actions impact that is really valuable.
Yeah, so we've got an LMS in-house, of course, within Fugro. And LMS for us is very much a system of records, actually, and it does support us with a lot of the processes. But for me, it's not a key focus, right? For digital learning and being able to curate some of the content to our employees, it's a good way to guide them. The priority that we have currently is to ensure that what we offer is very much role-based, that we have the direct communication with the businesses, and that we really build on that proximity that we have with the business. So LMS, great in support of L&D and a lot of the processes, but not a big priority at the moment in Fugro.
How have you found making sure that L&D can be a trusted advisor in recommending change, recommending interventions, both to HR, but also other business leaders, getting that buy-in back?
So for that, again, the proximity is key, right? I think sometimes L&D departments are quite inward looking. So looking at how can we get the best learning solutions out, what is the latest in the learning industry. But at the end, the reason for existing is to serve our internal customers. So do we actually, as L&D professionals, know what it is to be in the shoes of our employees? Do we really understand what drives our business, why certain business objectives are set? And to become really a trusted business partner, you need to be part of the business cycle, right? Are you there when the strategic objectives for a certain service line or business unit is set? Do you have those quarterly business review meetings with the different businesses? Do you actually know, and this is again holistically within HR, do you know what the challenges are on workforce, on attrition, on retention, on growing the business, on transformation? If you're not close to the business, it's very hard to be a trusted advisor. So for me, governance and operating model has always been two big topics. Governance all about how do we ensure that you've got a good cadence with your business in knowing what's on their agenda, knowing how close they are at meeting their objectives, or how objectives will change in the next year or next coming 3 years, and to be able to speak the same language, right? That's the only way that you can really become a trusted advisor.
As a personal anecdote, I remember my granddad, who's been in construction all his life, was telling me a story about someone, a surveyor that came in and was trying to tell him how to do something that was ultimately was going to put some of his workers at risk. And he said he knew that what they were asking was that they weren't understanding actually the exact conditions. And he asked them to show me your hands, and he's like, you have soft hands. I'll tell you how to build the house. And it was really just about that understanding that, there's expertise. I say there's expertise in these people that have been there 20, 15, 20 years, that work in really volatile conditions. And that trust has to go both ways. Being close to what are the actual day-to-day challenges, bringing the expertise that you can bring from, being in the strategy meetings, and really making sure that it's a conversation between both.
Yeah, and then still, right, if you have those soft hands and you haven't been in a role, do articulate well what you can bring to the table to help them, right? We've got a great mix in the academy team in Fugro with technical trainers who have 20-year experience offshore. But we also got a digital team with almost the artists that can develop 3D models and can work on, great digital learning solutions. And you want to have the best of both, right?
Yeah.
So they're also interacting. One knowing the business and knowing what it is to be out in the field and the challenges of training offshore staff. And the other knows what is the best digital solution to retain knowledge, to enhance experience in learning solutions, right? And both bring one element to the table to get to that ideal solution. So yes, one is understanding where people are coming from, but also being sure that you can well articulate what you bring to the table.
And ultimately, the advances in that, the digital solutions and scenario planning and simulation, most importantly, has reduced the risk, reduced the chances of accidents and danger. And if it helps one person, if it makes one process more safe, then that's the key, especially in industries like this.
Absolutely. And maybe that's also so in the industry where Fugro is working, it's not an opt-out, right? Learning and development, being competent in a technical role, it's not an option. It's a necessity, right? To be safe, to deliver the quality that is needed. And there, it's also about what is competence assurance, right? So it's developing and maintaining the skills that are needed to be safe in your job, but with it also provide the quality products to our clients.
Perhaps then as a bit of a segue to reflect a little bit on your own personal journey in the learning space. You've worked with Nick Van Dam. I know Nick, who was at actually that Paris event that we first met at. Nick's on our advisory board, and it's just a great steer, always bringing research. A lot of what he does is around leadership development, and I know you've coached leaders yourself. Is how I'd be curious to know a little bit more about what you see as maybe some key pillars when you're talking with leaders that want to develop. What are some key skills that people should be looking to reflect on and work on? Yeah,
so I mainly mentored and coached learning leaders, so leaders in the space of L&D. And for me, I think over the last conversation of the last years, a lot of the conversation about learning leader has been exactly about the topic of governance and operating model. How do I organize learning and development departments in the best way to have the business proximity? How to balance topics like intimacy, efficiency, and agility of a learning department, and how to ensure that you're not siloed as an L&D department, not inward looking, and not only siloed as not having a close connect with business, but also not siloed in the wider HR space. So what is the linkage with workforce planning, talent acquisition, talent management, engagement, and culture? And secondly, the governance is very much around, how do you have that conversation going? Are you part of business review meetings? Who are your key stakeholders? How are you linking into operational excellence? Or actually, what is your impact on not only company results, but specifically on the business objectives for different business units and service lines? And I think a lot of our colleagues that are growing in the career path of learning and development, that's very much the next step to be made to become a leader in learning and development. We do a lot of the transformation with new technology to uncrewed vessels and remote operations. The same is, of course, what is the new technology bringing to L&D. Augmented reality is definitely a topic that we will be working on. Secondly, as we are part of an engineering company, Fugro is an engineering company, to look at how can we make the connect between what is learning and development and what is operational excellence.
Well, we're really looking forward to having your insights as part of the iVentiv session in Amsterdam. And one thing iVentiv does is bring leaders together, and we're always really emphasize the importance of it being a peer-to-peer exchange, a chance for you to connect with others, learn from others, maybe get an idea of what not to do, as well as ideas of what that you could be exploring. How important for you, or what's the value for you in getting outside of the organization and meeting with peers in forums such as iVentiv?
I think it's critical. Right, it's always leaking at the plumber's house, and we not always take care of ourselves, right? So to look at development, to stay current in the industry is important. And what I very much like about iVentiv versus some of the conferences, I've been on a stage, right, talking about successes in my career, talking about the next project that I've delivered, and trying to get as much kudos or applaud as possible. But what I like about iVentiv, it's a trusted environment where you share challenges. We don't know all, so let's learn from our colleagues. Let's learn from our peers. And I think iVentiv is really a community setup, where it's a safe environment to share your challenges and learn from each other, instead of just bragging about what you do good, right? So that's what I very much like about iVentiv, and looking forward to be there in Amsterdam in the upcoming event.
Thank you. One of my kind of staple phrases is that I always say, you don't have to come with answers. All we ask is that you come with questions. And sometimes just being in the room with people that have the same questions as you is all the forum that you need to really drive that change. So we're really pleased that we can deliver that, and that that's all about what it's there behind me, the learn, connect, develop. So being able to create that space and be involved with organizations, and to hear these insights as well of organizations that are making real change. So we're really excited, and thank you for your time today and sharing some of the insights and some of what you'll be talking about in the summer.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Looking forward to meeting you there.